This is the CFL This Week.
Week 6 of the Canadian Football League is complete, and it has certainly left us with our normal amount of controversies and things to talk about. Shockers. Welcome to the CFL This Week. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil, and as always, I'm joined by a brilliant cast of characters who all have something to say. Let's talk about Pat Steinberg. He's from Sportsnet 960 in Calgary, and he also writes for CFL.ca. Thank you so much for joining us there, Pat.
Thanks for having me on. This should be fun.
Hey, I know of no one that works those sidelines in the Canadian Football League and always looks so darn good doing it. He is TSN reporter Matthew Scianitti.
What's going on, Bubba?
Hey, and talk about talent. She is the host of the CFL on TSN. Kate Beirness joins us.
Bubs, feels good to be reunited, my friend.
As always, that's for sure. Hey, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will start right there. They are 5-1, and let's be honest, they've got a real good balance of offense, defense, special teams. But as always, the quarterback is the focal point. Zach Collaros. Hey, we've covered the Hamilton Tiger Cats here. This is the Tiger Cats audio network. He looks reborn. Is he the reigning, at least the leader, for CFL MOP? Pat, I'll start with you.
Right now, if I were voting and I get the opportunity to do that at the end of every season, he'd be getting the top vote for me, because right now he's kind of thrown down the gauntlet like the rest of the Bombers have. That this is not only the best quarterback in the CFL, and he has been lights out since week 1, but that's the best team, and not only by record, but you take a look across team leaderboards, statistical leaderboards, individual, like it is Bombers, and Zach Collaros looks like, you're right, he looks reborn. He looks like the guy in Hamilton that was an MOP candidate. He looks like the guy that led them to the Grey Cup in 2014. He's been accurate. He's been explosive. He's been using his weapons. He's honed in on a number 1 target. And yeah, if it were me, it's Collaros as my number 1. And there'd probably be a few guys in the mix for runner-up, but it'd be tough knowing the record, knowing the success, not to have Collaros at the top of my ballot.
Matthew, I know you've covered him personally. Was there not a time, I guess last year he played for basically 4 franchises and over a calendar year. What's happened with this guy?
There's one thing about Zach that's very true that I've known since I started covering him with the Argos back in 2012. He's supremely confident in himself. And when Zach will tell you that when he's feeling confident, he feels like that he is the best player in the league, and it's not even close. And it's not arrogance; it's a self-assuredness. And when he plays like that, I go to that Kenny Lawler touchdown, where he basically just threaded the needle right at the corner of the end zone, and that's a throw that only Zach can make when Zach's feeling Zach. And at this point, there isn't anyone, when he's confident, he's self-assured, and he believes in his abilities, there isn't anyone who can touch him.
Kate, because of your position, I think you've seen every snap in the Canadian Football League through week 5. Are you seeing anyone that's playing at a better level?
No, I honestly agree with Pat and Matthew. I would definitely give it to Collaros at this point, but you just have to give credit to the guys around him too, right? They set him up perfectly, right? From the running back situation, having the 2 backs, and then having Lawler. Nick Dembski was absolutely sensational this past weekend. You have all of that, and then your defense goes out, and they're consistently playing. We've given Willie Jefferson and Jeff Coat and Big Hill so much love on the panel this year, and rightly so. But for what they do, and then get him into the field position that they give him too. It's a perfect storm right now in Winnipeg, in my opinion. And yeah, does he deserve the award? Yeah, right now he absolutely does. Like each and every year, it's just going to be maintaining his health. So I think, as all CFL broadcasters and fans, we just want to see him get through the season and continue to play at this level, because the redemptive story is just, it's awesome to see.
Matthew, it's crazy because I remember in Hamilton when he was shipped out, I believe the Tiger Cats were 0-8 at the time. It was just a horrible game in Calgary. And I looked at his confidence level, and you talk about the confidence, but it was at an all-time low. And it surprises me in many ways that as he's gotten back to being that confident guy.
Yeah, the only person here who can understand what what athletes deal with in terms of confidence is Kate, having, been an athlete herself. The fact is the way Zach approaches a game is, if he feels like he's got belief in himself, but from those around him, he's going to go ahead and produce. And when he came to Winnipeg, notwithstanding the injury to Matt Nichols and notwithstanding the Chris Strebler package they had in, Mike O'Shea basically said, "You're our guy. We're putting our chips in with you." And you can see what that did to him. I mean, you look at that playoff run in 2019, for someone who had played for as many teams as he had in that season, dealt with all of the physical and maybe psychological struggles that he was dealing with, to see him be in a situation where they were completely invested in him, you see the dividends that pays off. And as Kate mentioned, they have every component piece to be the dominant team this year. And at this point, notwithstanding a hiccup against the Argos, I mean, it hasn't even been close in terms of matchups. And at this point, if Zach's playing that way, I don't see, certainly it's football and, momentum swings and turnovers and all that, and, unforeseen injuries, knock on wood. But at this point, I mean, the Bombers are the best team in the league. It's not close. And Zach Collaros is the best player in the league.
Appreciate you calling me an athlete, Matt. Really appreciate that one.
I think many of us were expecting the Saskatchewan Roughriders to be the best team in the league, and they've taken it on the chin from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. In this past weekend's game, Roughriders defensive end AC Leonard was not playing. He had been suspended for 2 games for not providing a urine sample. Now, this gets real complicated here, and I know there's CFLPA things going on as well, too. But obviously, in some ways, he probably hurt his team by not being there. Kate, where does the CFL, or maybe even the Roughriders, take this story from here?
I mean, here's the deal. At the end of the day, and I don't know how you guys feel about this too, and here's the problem too. We don't know everything, right? Like when these type of stories come out, whether it be CFL, NFL, XYZ, you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Was he not present at the time? Did he not want to take it? But my always thing with things like this these are the rules. You know what I mean? And I know they call me, like, I got a nickname back in high school. It's like rule follower Beirness. Yeah, but at the same time, if you need a urine sample, just, take a whiz in a cup, provide it, and you're good to go. And with everything, and I mean, obviously it got so much worse in that game with the para riders that got kicked out, and obviously, the minor concussion to Cody Fajardo. But yeah, and especially when something like that happens, and then you need him on that field. I mean, the Riders needed him so badly on that field on the weekend, and it just didn't happen. But I mean, as I said, I don't personally have enough information to say what went wrong or what went right. But my thing is, that's the rules. Provide the sample.
Well, Pat, I mean, the head coach Dickinson at a press conference that day when the news got announced, I mean, just a crazy, long-winded kind of press conference saying he tried to do it, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I personally, I've been covering sports a long time. I don't remember ever hearing anything like this. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's a 2-game suspension. But does it have to be longer?
Well, it's crazy because when we were talking about this on the air on Friday when it happened, and a lot of people had texted in saying, "Well, I mean, is it going to be is him taking this suspension going to be better off than what the suspension would be if he ended up getting dinged on the test?" And you're like, okay, that's a good point. And Kate's right. Like we don't know the entire situation. Like we don't know if he was just straight up, no, I'm not doing this. And if that's the case, you're banging your head against the wall because you're a pro athlete. This is what goes along with the territory. And when you take into account that even before the 2 guys that got kicked out and Fajardo's injury, they didn't have Gainey, they didn't have Purifoy. So you're like, okay, well, they're already in a tough situation against the best team in the league. Like as Kate said, whiz in the cup, let's go, let's do this. So if it was a situation, and again, we don't know, and I understand why we don't know, but if it was a scenario where this guy is just like, no, I don't want to do it, then I think there needs to be a long talk, because that's what goes along with being a professional athlete. It's what goes with the territory. And if that is what is determined to happen, then yeah, it probably should be longer than 2 games, because that's kind of a middle finger to the entire way we go about things in pro sports nowadays.
It's like winning the Tour de France and then being like, you know what, I'm going to hold off on that test. Just give me 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks, and then I'll test. No problem.
Well, Matt, how would you feel if you were one of his teammates?
There are rules. I mean, the CFL locker rooms, as they are, have literature that talks about when your number is called and you have to go ahead and provide a sample. You provide a sample, just as it has literature that describes what the uniform protocols are. So these guys are not ignorant to it. I agree with Pat. I mean, there's zero tolerance for me. I've been around this sport. I've been around professional sports long enough that if you're a professional athlete and you don't understand that part of your obligation is to go ahead and make sure that it's a clean environment, and you are worried about other, things, again, not knowing the context of it, or why AC Leonard didn't want to provide the sample. I mean, you're hurting your team and you're being frankly selfish. And I see AC on the sidelines. I see multiple players on the sidelines who I know, others I won't name who might debate the efficacy of all these tests. And, it's part of the deal. And if you don't like it, then you can choose not to play. But given the standards we set in order to make sure that everyone is playing on a level playing field, we saw what happened with Andrew Harris 2 years ago. I mean, there was a test. They're going to test, and the best Canadian in the league, the best running back in the league, had to take a seat. That's if one of the best players in the league has to take a seat because of, he broke the rules or was to have been deemed to have broken the rules. That's it. And AC Leonard's no different.
The Stampeders get their revenge on the Elks to some respect. 32-16 was the final score in Edmonton. The game ended with, when I'm going to say some controversy, as Bo Levi Mitchell returns. That was a good thing for the Calgary Stampeders. But he throws a 50-yard touchdown with 20 seconds remaining. The game well in hand. We've seen many times in football where teams just take the victory celebration, take a knee, even if they have to take multiple knees. But he throws a 50-yard bomb. Kate, I see you smiling there. I feel like you enjoyed this.
Well, no, I didn't. I had the under. Of course I didn't enjoy that. Are you kidding me? Come on now. I just told you that I'm a betting lady. Let's go. No, I'm just kidding. No, but my concern, no. And you know what, too? Pat and Matthew, you guys can chime in on this. The consensus on the panel was that it was for point differential for playoffs, correct? Like they actually would need the point because that was the end of their season series. So where it seemed like a real jerk move, right, by the Stamps, they actually needed that because of the score in the previous game. So am I correct, Pat? I have no idea.
You're bang. I believe that touchdown won them the season series.
It did.
So it actually ends up making sense. But on the telecast, it was a good point. It's like, I don't know if all the Elks players were necessarily in the same mindset. Like, I don't know if you're I'm like, they needed it for point differential. It's okay. Like, in the moment, you were probably pretty riled up. They're like, what are you doing? They're like, take a knee. Let's go. Let's get off the field. And instead, you're finding Kamar Jordan for a touchdown. I can understand in the moment why you'd be a little frustrated. But, yeah, that won them the season series. So it makes sense.
Is that the first, Pat? Is that the first divider between, or was difference maker if there is a tie?
Yeah.
Or is it number 4?
It's number 1.
It's number 1. So it's season series, and because they split and it's a 14-game series, points 4 points against points differential. So Dave Dickinson and that Stampeders coaching staff was actually pretty on the ball.
Well, and Matt, I'm going to say that to you. Were the Elks coaching staff not on the ball by saying, "Hey, we got to play this hard"?
I'm not going to go ahead and debate the here or there's about the Elks coaching staff because they've had that organization's had a rough 2 or 3 weeks. What I will say is the standings as they are right now are jammed, especially in the West after Winnipeg setting the pace there, and given the fact that it's going to be jammed in the East too. You're going to need those tiebreakers because right now, I mean, we're early in the season, but because it's a 14-week sprint, you're going to need everything to go your way. But to me, that play showed me everything that I've always known about Bo Levi Mitchell, and he's a straight up killer. He doesn't care about your feelings. I've known, and Kate knows this, and Bo, we talk about Zach Collaros' level of confidence. Well, Bo Levi Mitchell, when he is, when he's back on the field, the only thing that guy cares about is ripping your heart out.
Like he was waving bye to everyone at Commonwealth after
he
that.
was.
Too. I was like, dude, you just threw a bomb with like no time left. And you're like, bye, Edmonton fans. I'm like, oh, I love this.
Yeah,
I love it.
He's a straight up Texas boy who just loves the lights and just wants to take your heart out. And you know what? You don't want Bo Levi Mitchell to be any other way.
And Pat, that waving or playing to the crowd seemed to continue after the final whistle.
Yeah, and I mean it's so on brand. Like we did a radio show with Bo, and he would come on with me once a week for about 4 straight years out here in Calgary, and it's as on brand as it gets. He's a showman. He loves to sell the game. He loves to play into the rivalries, and that was perfect. That was perfect because it was exactly what the Stampeders needed. And I think even if you're Bo, you need to kind of hype yourself up a little bit because it took him a quarter or two to get into that game, and it was a shaky start after missing 3. I think for him, and as Matt was talking about, like this guy is a natural born killer, but I also think like he needs to motivate himself, and he needs to find that within himself. And he's starting another huge game in week 7, and he needs to make sure that his motivation and his personal kind of drive is where it needs to be, which I think was part of the end of that game as well, where he was kind of getting into it. I loved it. It was awesome.
I loved it too. I thought it was without losing the bet. I thought it was amazing.
Okay, guys, we've talked about the top player in the league, who we believe is the top player in the league right now. We've defined who the top team in the league is. I think it's inarguable who the worst team is right now. The Ottawa Redblacks have scored 80 points in 5 games. This is the CFL. They've scored 80 points. Now, they brought in some offensive talent on the weekend to try and improve some places here. Is this coaching? Is this not enough talent? Yes, they won the Grey Cup not so long ago. Have they been stripped of too much talent? Kate, what's up with the Redblacks? Where do you start to rebuild this? Because I think it looks like a rebuild right now at this point at 1-4.
The hard part is too, is like they fooled us in their opening game, right? Like the defense was so fantastic. And obviously, like we used to obviously being on the panel with Paul LaPolice and Mike Benavides as well. You have a lot of belief in these guys. And I have a lot of belief in Ben's defenses. I always have. I think he's fantastic. So they come out for their first game, and I'm like, okay, you know what? This is a better team than I thought. No, they're way worse than I could have ever imagined. I think offensively, they are. I mean, I don't know where to start with them. There's not enough talent. I saw who they loaded up. They loaded up on Sunday with a bunch of new players, and rightly so. But the first thing that needs to be addressed is they need a quarterback. I mean, Matt Nichols is not healthy enough to play. And I was saying this before, too. We've seen Dom Damas for so many years now, too, and he is what he is. And I'm not trying to be mean in saying that, but you all of a sudden, you're not going to become a new player at 32 years old. So first of all, they need a quarterback. Yeah, they've loaded up with some receivers, but they literally need every facet on offense, in my opinion. Yeah, it's a rebuild, but at the end of the day, you got to put enough talent on the field for these guys, you know what I mean, for Lapo to run a proper offense. So, and I think the defense, and especially in their second game that we watched too, I mean, their defense is just out there all the time. It's exhausting watching this defense play. So it's such a disaster right now. And I hope the players that they bring in certainly do help. But I think the number one thing that they need to address is the quarterback position.
Matt, you cover a lot of these teams in the East. I mean, you're up close and personal. What are you seeing?
The common denominator is Marcel Desjardins. And with all the respect that you have to give the man for constructing or turning, I should say, a team, a new franchise into a Grey Cup contender and the most dominant team in the East for 3-4 years, you have to also in equal measure, as Kate pointed out, everything she said there points back to the general manager. It's if you can't go ahead and you can't fill the cabinets with talent, I mean, and it's not like Marcel Desjardins hasn't done it before. I mean, this is a team that had several years with multiple 1,000-yard receivers. Now also they had the benefit of, Henry Burris and then Trevor Harris. But Paul LaPolice is an incredible coach. Mike Benavides is an incredible coach. And this is not an indictment completely on Marcel Desjardins, but, ultimately, if you're the general manager and talent acquisition is your job and the talent is clearly lacking and the depth is clearly lacking, then ultimately you're the first one who has to answer that. And right now, I don't know when the Ottawa Redblacks are going to win another game.
Oh,
Like straight up, I don't know. I was saying this and I'll be going back to Ottawa in like 10 days time. Like, I don't know if they're going to win another game. Like, and that's not on Lapo, and it's not on Benavides, and it's not on any of the, talented coaching staff they have. And it's not singling out Marcel Desjardins, but the fact is he's the first one asked to answer questions as to why, they are struggling. And yes, over the years, they've had the opportunity to retain talent in terms of, contract decisions and negotiations. And, was the decision of the franchise to move on. If that's the case, then you have to always keep filling the cabinets up. And when the cabinets look as bare as they do now, the only person who has to answer that is the general manager, full stop.
But Pat, again, Matthew brings up a good point, the general manager's responsibility of talent acquisition. Isn't talent evaluation also an important part? How could a guy that put together a Grey Cup winning team and a team that was contending for, a good part of, I'm going to say 3 years, what happened?
It's hard to wrap your head around, because when you're talking about retaining talent, I can't imagine that Trevor Harris and Greg Ellingson and William Powell and I can't imagine that there was no chance that they could have retained those players, among others that left after 2018 in the Grey Cup appearance. And, and 2019 was an absolute disaster. And so 2020 and now 2021, I think that we knew it was going to be a rebuild. I don't think we knew it was going to be as painful as it's been since week one. But it's not like, and then you lose Sinopoli right before the start of the season. So it's and the O-line took some hits too, but it's not like they've gone out there and pounded in new talent. Like it looked like going into the season, Ottawa was still on talent, going to be one of the bottom teams in the league. So if the plan is to do a slow rebuild, then I guess they're on track, but there's still a lot of questions about the way they're going. So I'm not exactly sure what the plan is. I will echo Kate and Matt. I think Paul LaPolice is a hell of a coach, and I love the way that he has gotten back to this league, and I'm really hoping that it works out for him. But on talent, yeah, they need to make some big time additions, and they need to help that defense out, because after 3 weeks of some pretty solid performances on field, it's been hard to watch the last 2 weeks. It's almost 100 points they've given up. So it's not only they're not scoring, but now they're not helping a pretty good defense out too. So I'm fascinated to see how this story goes, but it's hard to, if I'm trying to give Matt an answer as to when they're going to win their next game, I don't know when it's coming either.
2022.
Oh, no. No, but Kate, you locked in on the quarterback situation. And I don't like to speculate sometimes, but it is a topic of conversation that's going on out there. It may have been, we don't know the status of Dane Evans in Hamilton and how long he may be out. We're not quite sure about the status of Jeremiah Masoli right now, but those are two 1A, 1B quarterbacks that are sitting in Hamilton. Does a move need to be made, or some type of offer? Or Jeremiah is a free agent at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. This topic is, whether the Tiger Cats want to admit it or not. And I know I'm on the Tiger Cats audio network here, but this is a topic of conversation around the league.
Yeah, but it's also why you keep. Yeah, it's a luxury position, right, to be in this league, to have two QBs that are interchangeable at any time. But that's why you keep them, right? Dane obviously took the reins, and then, it's heartbreaking to see what happened in Toronto. But I don't move on from Jeremiah right now. Let's wait to see what's wrong with Dane. But why would you move on when, you quite possibly need a starting QB? I guess you could look at, if you go around the league, I think Mayer's still under contract. I don't know. I always forget with COVID, with the 2019, he may have 1 year left, but Mayer's proven that he can be a starting quarterback in this league as well. The Redblacks have to do something. I don't know what it is, but if they've got to ride out the end of the season with Dom Davis like this, it's just not going to be pretty. Let's be honest.
Pat?
Well, and you know who else? That has shown that it can be a pretty good starting quarterback in this league is the guy they had for 2020, and they decided to move on from Nick Arbuckle and decided to go Nichols. And look, Matt Nichols is a longtime CFL quarterback and does a lot of good things. I know that there's also health on top of what's happening right now, but I don't know if Nick Arbuckle makes the difference and all of a sudden they're a 3-2 football team if Arbuckle's there. But you take a look at what he's done in Toronto. He's looked pretty good since they handed him the reins, and he looked pretty good in his 7 starts with Calgary in 2019. So did they make the right call not going about the contract negotiation with Arbuckle and instead deciding to go down the Matt Nichols route? That also is front of mind for me with Ottawa, knowing how things have gone this season so far.
Matt, final word to you on what you would fix if you were the general manager of the Ottawa Redblacks.
Well, very quickly, in terms of the quarterbacks in Hamilton, the one we're not talking about is David Watford. He's taking majority of the snaps right now, so that's the interesting story of the day. I think I have an eminent respect for Marcel Desjardins. I think, though, of all of the things that are going to happen with this team, it'll be interesting to see what he decides to do in terms of a sudden jolt move. It typically happens when teams are struggling the way they do, and given it is a loyal fan base in Ottawa. They love that team, and they love it in the community. OSEG, the founding and ownership partners of the team, I would imagine would be going to Marcel saying, "You can't mess this up," because to have 2 losing seasons is unacceptable. So whether it's kind of a shock move, there have always been rumors that the way that they are in Ottawa is this is the standard, this is the negotiation process. If you don't like the number, if you don't like this, then we're moving on from you. They're going to need a big splash or a big move, whether it's a trade or whether it's moving on from Marcel or whether it's something, because at this point they have now tried it. It's a year. It's just almost a season and a half, and they're not good. And it's not an indictment of anybody else right now but the general manager, and that's only because he set a standard that was almost impossibly high in the East for as long as it was. I mean, they went to 3 Grey Cups and won one. I mean, it's like when you do that from 2015 to 2018, I mean, it's and then you start the precipitous drop that they've had when they have the ability to retain talent and they decided not to. And you see that talent succeeding in other teams in different parts of the league, then you ultimately have to go back and say, if you're not reloading and you're not bringing new talents in and you're sticking with, again, as Kate said, Dom Davis is a great guy. I've been around him enough, and very, very manageable backup quarterback. But at this point, he's not the future. He's may not even be the present. So it's really going to be on Marcel because to make some kind of move, because I imagine his bosses do not want the Redblacks to be rooted at the bottom of the East or the CFL any longer, and with the potential to alienate that fan base, because that would be terrible.
Well, I don't have a calendar in front of me, or a schedule in front of me. Let's look for when Ottawa plays Winnipeg, because they'll probably beat the Blue Bombers, because that's the Canadian Football League and the way things are in this crazy league.
Good point by you, Bubba.
Hey, folks, we are approaching the midway point of the CFL shortened season, and you know what? There's going to be 4 more games that'll provide a whole new set of storylines for us to discuss next week on the CFL this week. I want to thank our guests and our co-hosts, Pat Steinberg, Matthew Scianitti, and of course, Kate Beirness, the great Kate Beirness. So
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I don't know about that, Bubs. Athlete, guys, you're like throwing out things that aren't even true at this point.
Folks, of course, we want to thank you, the listener and the viewer, for checking out the CFL this week. This has been a good one, and we're looking forward to talking to you next week right here on the Ticats Audio Network.